Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this session of Women in Crypto, the Women to Know in Investigations presented by Chainalysis. This is going to be a great discussion where we will all get the opportunity to hear from some of the best crypto investigators from institutions across the ecosystem. I'm Beth Bisbee, and I'm the head of US investigations at Chainalysis, and I want to introduce Chainalysis to those of you who don't already know us. Chainalysis is the blockchain data platform. We provide data, software, services, and research to government agencies, exchanges, financial institutions, and insurance and cybersecurity companies in over 60 countries. Our data powers investigations, compliance, and market intelligence software that has been used to solve some of the world's most high-profile criminal cases and grow consumer access to cryptocurrency safely. To provide some housekeeping before we get into our discussion, after our engaging panel discussion, we will have a brief Q&A, so please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A during the discussion, which we'll try to get to at the end. Please note that all of the views expressed by the speakers are their own, and they do not necessarily represent the views of their respected companies. With that being said, I would now love to introduce you to the three brilliant women who are joining me today. Kaylin Matchik from JP Morgan Cybersecurity Intelligence Group, Kelsey Dean, Intelligence Manager at Coinbase, and Mel Freebre, Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorist Financing Senior Investigator. So welcome, ladies. So let's dig in. For many of us within the crypto investigations realm, our path to working investigations varied. Mine started while I was with the Drug Enforcement Administration, working within financial investigations unit back in 2015. My primary responsibility was to follow the money by analyzing financial records and identifying possible co-conspirators. One day, my team received a request for assistance on a cryptocurrency investigation. We all jumped at the opportunity to have something to look at other than bank statements. But to be honest, though, I had zero knowledge of what crypto was, let alone how to investigate it. So I poked around with others within the space to include other law enforcement agencies, private sector, academia, and YouTube University to understand how to follow the funds. This led me onto an unknown yet fulfilling path of learning, adapting, and transforming how to think about, conduct, and solve investigations. So Kaylin, can you provide a little background and explain what led you down the path to investigating crypto?
Absolutely. So you mentioned there's a lot of paths, and I don't think there's any one traditional path, and mine certainly wasn't. I became interested in crypto early on in its life cycle, but I made a very conscious decision not to purchase Bitcoin when it was at like $5 or $10 each. I sat there and I went, why would I give real money for fake money? And I decided not to do it. And I got a real chip on my shoulder in 2017 or so, when that all really came back to show that, that maybe hindsight is 2020. And so I was and am an investigator into cyber criminals, nation state actors. And as I saw the uptick in how they were moving money and moving into specifically crypto, to steal and launder and ransom these funds, I became really interested in watching that and how they're doing that. And a little piece too went, these criminals are getting in on the Bitcoin, and I missed that train. So became very interested and have really enjoyed learning about how it works and tracking it.
I think we're all kicking ourselves, Kaylin, because I think we all have the same mindset with early adopter. Oh, darn. Kelsey, what enticed you into the world of crypto investigations?
Well, I definitely did not know that this was a career path in college. It was not on any career panels I attended then. I literally Googled analytical jobs out of college, and I came across my first investigations position with a corporate private investigative service called Kroll Associates. And so that's kind of where I fell in love with investigations in general, because they really taught us the full gambit of OSINT research and public records research and social media, and just like showed me the world of possibilities there, and let me kind of fall in love with figuring stuff out. But from there, I knew I kind of wanted to leave the consultancy world, because there you would spend a couple weeks working on an intelligence report, and then it would kind of float off into the ether and you never really knew what came of it. So I knew I wanted to be more embedded in the stakes of the investigative work that I was doing. And I started to have more investigations similar to Kaylin that kind of touched on cryptocurrency. But I was still very much a novice to any sort of tracing. But in 2017, it became obvious that there was a lot of really interesting stuff going on with all of these exchange hacks and darknet markets. And so it just seemed like the most fascinating place to be an investigator, because there was this public blockchain where you could follow the funds, which is something that kind of doesn't exist in the normal traditional world of financial crimes. So when the investigations role opened up at Coinbase, it just seemed like a very natural fit.
No, I think we all also kind of encapsulate that, how we want to be able to see what our work ends up being. And when it goes into the investigative ether, it's difficult to continue on and have that passion. How about you, Mel? How did your path begin, and kind of what's your background within the investigative space?
So I've been mining several cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin, Monero, Bitcoin Cash, since 2015, changed a bit over the years. And I did it more as a casual thing. And in 2017, a friend of mine and I got hired at a Canadian crypto exchange to just process e-transfers for users, because at the time the market was crazy. I remember telling my friend, like, oh my God, this is so cool. It's an exchange. I didn't know you could make a career out of something I had been just kind of doing for fun on the side. And Kaylin, just to make you feel better, I did mine in 2015, but I sold everything also in 2015. And then soon after joining that exchange, they hired a CAMLO, a chief AML officer. It took me 3 days, but eventually I built up the courage to go up to her and basically say, hey, like, I don't have any like traditional AML experience, but I'd love to be on your team. And she took a chance on me and put me to work. I did everything from watch lists and sanction screening to policy writing. And I was the sole investigator on that team until I left, so almost a full year. And since then I've consulted as an investigator for 2 other large international exchanges, one of which was Bitfinex, where the CCO gave me so many opportunities and mentored me as well, which allowed to expand my technical skill set to where it is today. So now I do investigations as my day job, and on the side I teach people how to do my job through a company called TCAE, where I'm a Chainalysis training partner, and I offer some career coaching on the side for anyone that needs help for interviewing for these lovely exchanges as well.
So that is such an interesting background for getting involved with the investigation side, just because the mining is like, hey, free money. I'm generating my own money, right? So how awesome. So it sounds like we all had familiar paths getting into this field, and we all were kind of early on getting into this field because we were interested in investigations. And I know that I get a question a lot when I'm at dinner with friends or family. And the question is, how do crypto cases actually come about? And when I was at DEA, the reputation of have a crypto address, call Beth, became the slogan, and my approach to investigations ended up being very reactive. But now that I'm at Chainalysis, our approach is both proactive and reactive, depending on whether it's law enforcement or research or commercially driven requests. So Mel, how do crypto cases come up for you? And are you more of a proactive or alert-driven approach?
There we go. Make sure I'm off mute. The cases where I currently consult come through several different case streams. Either it's law enforcement requests, blockchain monitoring alerts, traditional transaction monitoring alerts, internal escalations, escalations from other exchanges, because we cooperate with each other very well. It's definitely more alert driven just because of the volume of investigations coming through, which is why my team is currently hiring dozens of investigators. But the team gets involved in a lot of working groups around the world where we share information on typologies and trends with law enforcement agencies and with other exchanges as well. And my team also spent a lot of time on educating and training each other on the latest developments and things to keep an eye out for to help improve the quality of our SARs so that we're properly giving the right information over to FIUs around the world so that they can develop proper guidance.
That's another thing within the investigations, because it is such a global network that we all have. It's really remarkable for us to be able to share those methodologies across different jurisdictions. And it's really enticing in order to grow in that respect. Kelsey, what about your investigations? How do they begin?
Well, pretty similarly, we're both proactive and reactive. Obviously, Coinbase is a very large company now, so we have a lot of teams that serve in investigative functions. So specifically, my team, Global Intelligence, focuses on escalations that we receive from law enforcement. We receive hundreds of maybe thousands of subpoenas every year from law enforcement. And we actually publish a transparency report so that our customers have a sense of what that looks like. And we work with law enforcement to help them with their investigations since understanding of crypto is so nascent. We really want to bolster their work there. And then we receive escalations from other teams who are seeing trends within the company, perhaps an uptick in fraud in some particular sector. And then our team also has a rotation where we focus on different risk areas. And within those risk areas, we each have our own kind of proactive techniques to try to identify anomalous behavior, whether it's, some SQL queries of our internal databases, or we read about something on CoinDesk and then kind of look into it within our system. So it's kind of a fun mixture. It gives you a lot of creativity and freedom.
I like that too. The innovation within this space allows us to be able to be very diverse with what type of areas we want to actually investigate, which makes it fun and appealing. So speaking about investigations and being within this investigative space, there's a phrase that my team hears often, which is the blockchain never sleeps. And boy, does that ring true. Aside from the blockchain itself, Kaylin, what are some of the things that keep you up at night and some of the challenges you face as an investigator?
Yeah, great question. So looking at it from a bit of a broader lens, what keeps me up at night really is the speed with which our world has become reliant on the internet. As an older millennial in that group, I'm old enough to remember kind of like the before times and have come up in this growth period and seen, and now working in this space, I know exactly, how much is at stake with these systems and when they go down, what those impacts are going to be if they go down. My job to keep that from happening, hopefully. And crypto is part of this, right? So we've built this new system and reimagined the financial space. And what's great about it is that, we're bringing this ability to everyone. There's no barrier to entry, really. And that's a blessing. Everyone can take advantage of this system and the privacy that it affords you. The other side of that coin is, as an investigator, that's kind of the curse of it. That same access and that same privacy enables criminals to take advantage of the system very easily. And you find one of them, and sometimes it feels a little bit like whack-a-mole, like gotcha, and they pop up again a few hours later with a new address, and my job kind of starts over. And as I look at this from multiple lenses, as a consumer, how great this is. As an investigator, the problems that this causes. As a citizen and as a parent, what are the privacy concerns around this, and what does this look like with where our data is going and how it's being handled? Something I think about a lot is to kind of borrow from one of my favorite movies, Jurassic Park, the quote, I wonder, did we build this so quickly? Did we were so caught up in whether or not we didn't stop to think if we should, have we built those protections around the data and the processes? Are we in the process of doing that? And what's that going to look like in 10 years? I think there are fascinating conversations going on around these questions in this space right now. And I'm just really excited to see where it goes and how it all shakes out.
I like how you brought up the 3 points of like how this actually engages with different aspects as a consumer, as an investigator, and as a citizen. I think that sometimes you lose perspective of that as being an investigator, because you're just like head down, doing your job, trying to figure out what's going on, and then taking a step back and actually seeing like, well, what does this imply for the consumers that are actually doing this in order to either enhance the way that they are not able to do traditional banking, or are they going to do this so that they have privacy of what their funds actually look like? So I think that that's a really, really beneficial point that you brought up. Directing this to Kelsey, what are some of the challenges that you face, and what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I found one of the biggest challenges recently has just been scam investigations. Romance scams, investment scams are really rampant, but they're kind of not the sexier financial crime when it comes to crypto. So they almost get less attention, even though by volume, they're actually the largest financial crime. I think by Chainalysis' own crime report earlier this year, it's by far the largest. And they're really tricky to investigate because frequently the actors responsible are in kind of untouchable jurisdictions. So even when law enforcement wants to be able to do something about them, there's simply not much that can be done. And I also have a lot of sympathy for people that fall victim to the scams, particularly in crypto, because in the normal financial world, if someone says that they're going to promise you a 40% return on your investment, like that in and of itself is a red flag. But in crypto, there really are legitimate projects where, with yield farming, you can get 40%, like crazy 120% returns. And so it's really hard for new folks to the space to recognize what might actually be a scam. So I think that's a big challenge for the space in general right now. And then, of course, also in tracing, I always find mixers to be more challenging. There's, of course, things that you can do there, but I think that's also kind of a interesting challenge with blockchain tracing as well.
Yeah, so I like how you add on to what Kaylin had indicated of her 3. And then one of the areas is the victims, right? So it's like the consumer base, but also adding the victim side, which is part of our investigations for sure. Some of the other challenges that I see that like keep me up at night are like the ability to do the chain hopping so quickly, because as tracing, that's just really difficult to be able to do. And with the enhancement of wallets that allow that, make it extremely challenging for us to then actually follow the funds effectively. So it's like doing your traditional finance investigations where you're trying to track the cash. Those chain hopping is one of the most difficult, challenging aspects of it. So kind of transitioning a little bit, considering this is a Women in Crypto event, I would like to chat about what it's like for you all to be a women investigator in the crypto sphere. So Mel, what has it been like for you as a woman investigator, and what are some of the challenges that you have faced, or some of the benefits that you have had with being in this space?
Great question. Yeah, I feel like I have a bit of survivor's guilt for that, because to be honest, and I know this has not been the experience for some women in the industry, but I've been fortunate to never being made to feel like I was less for being a female crypto investigator. I'm not going to lie, I did brace myself for the hits. They just never came. My teammates and managers across the several exchanges I've consulted for were nothing but amazing, supporting, and encouraging. And I've always been made to feel like I was an asset to the team. My time at Bitfinex is probably the best example, where although I had significantly less AML experience than those on my team, just the fact that I was good at and understood the technical side of crypto, the CCO consistently gave me opportunities to speak on technical subjects at events, teach crypto to law enforcement agencies, write and publish articles with him. So although I never got the hits, my experience gave me live examples on how to treat and grow people if I'm ever in a position to have an active role in someone's career.
No, that's very fortunate that you've had that, because that has not been the sense for some people within the industry. Caitlin, do you mind explaining some of the experience of what you have gone through within this space?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had a mixed experience. I've worked with people and at places that have been fantastic, and similar to Mel said, you kind of brace yourself for the hits that never come, which I think on the one hand puts like its own tension on the experience, and you're kind of like, how long can you be in a waiting position before you really relax? But then on the other hand, I've certainly had the experience where I've been the only woman in meetings, and you kind of look around and you, why is that? Or I will suggest something and everyone kind of blows past it, and a couple minutes later, a man will say the same thing, and everyone latches on and goes, "Oh yes, let's do that." And you sit there with the question, like, I mean, do you say, "Hey, wait a minute, I just said that. Why did nobody hear me?" And then you start to question yourself: did I speak loud enough? Maybe it's me. Maybe and then you kind of cycle into this whole. Is it me? Is it not me? Is it the environment? Is it the culture? So those have been, some of the challenges, but I've also gotten some really great advice throughout my career. I've often sought out women mentors and found women in jobs I wanted to have, and formed a relationship with them. And I have never had an experience where any of them were not willing to lift me up and help me and give me advice and talk me through different situations, which has been just such a blessing. And I think that's something we can all do, to help each other and lift each other up as women in this space. And one of the most important pieces of advice I got early on in my career was take the seat at the table. Don't hang in back. You walk into a conference room and there's the table, and then there's all the seats around it. Why not you at the table? And I got that early in my career, and I, took that to heart. And I think that's been really beneficial to me.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And I agree. Sometimes you just have to be forward and take that seat at the table and prove that you deserve to be at that table. So my background being from law enforcement, which is continued to be a male dominated field, I actually didn't feel like there were any barriers or differences. Very similar to Mel, people respected what I had to say because I knew the technical knowledge, and then they were like, okay, well, cool, Beth, whatever Beth says goes, right? So I had that experience while I was at DEA, and was able to work some of the most incredible investigations throughout that. Once I shifted over to Chainalysis, I can honestly say that the experience hasn't changed much. However, I have noticed more within the private sector that you'll be in meetings and you may be the only woman on the call, and I don't necessarily notice it or recognize it. And instead they'll be like, okay, guys, and Beth. And I'm like, oh, like, is it that obvious, right? So like, it's nice that they're recognizing that sort of thing within the meetings that I've been a part of. So, but it is a work in progress for sure from just within this industry. Shifting gears a bit now and talking about kind of the elephant in the room, right? So the last 18 months have been a challenge because of the pandemic, but not only adapting to that, but for keeping our team's morale and investigative performances at high levels. So Zoom burnout is real. Slack message tones can only be enhanced by so many emojis, and personal connections between colleagues may have been difficult to develop or maintain. So as investigators within this space, how have you all managed to continue the collaboration while still working remotely and in the virtual world? So I'm going to kick this over to Mel for you to kind of kick off answering the question.
Yeah, and here I have to commend the culture of where I've consulted, especially the one I'm currently at, where team members are actively encouraged to reach out to one another. So we're no strangers to messaging each other, to have rubber ducking sessions, which is when like you just want someone on the call to just talk to, like because you can't figure out like what recommendations to put on a case, and just to have someone to talk it out to like organize your ideas, or just to ask for help. So I think culture is a big thing in feeling comfortable in approaching each other for help, to just chat, to collaborate on something. And it has to come from the top down. And when hiring, like you have to look for individuals that are, we're in this together mentality, not necessarily you versus me. And because of that ability for us being comfortable approaching each other, time sensitive issues are handled well. There's always like 10 people available and happy to lend a hand. And we maintain our relationships by having monthly lunch and learns, meetings with the team and department twice a week, and having just like drop-in sessions where we can just chat about anything. I also jump on and play video games with team members who also like doing that, and those who have similar interests will also get together to do things they like. Like one of the previous people I've worked with, I meet up with her every Saturday and we still paint together because we like doing that. So finding common interests is a good way to build that relationship.
I love that. I love that. I love that you have sessions just to have somebody to talk to. I know with some folks on my team, we just set up Zoom calls so that we like are in an office setting without being in the office together, and we can do our work and then be like, oh my gosh, can you believe that this happened? Whatever, right? Because that's like the office banter, and it's actually helped a lot. So I'm going to kick this over to Kelsey as well. So how do you feel you've been able to work well within dealing with the virtual and remote life?
Well, I do feel very fortunate to have built up a lot of in-person relationships before the pandemic, because I do think it's just easier in person to have that banter and many points to talk about. But during the pandemic, I think one thing that has really helped is our team has a morning standing meeting that isn't really about work. It's just kind of seeing what's up, chatting about kind of other things going on in our lives, so that when we do have meetings about specific cases or projects later on, our relationships feel less transactional, like there's more meat to it there. So I think that's one thing that has really helped. And then as far as helping new folks who have joined during the pandemic kind of get into the fold, I think we do these random coffee chat pairings where someone from a totally different sector of the org can get partnered with you. And I think that's really nice to simulate the serendipity of running into someone at lunch or in the cafeteria, so that you have interactions with folks that you otherwise totally wouldn't encounter in your normal Slack channels and emails for the day.
I love what you first said of how you just have a stand-in morning meeting to where you can just have the water cooler talk, because I feel like within Zoom conversations, like it's just right to work. Whereas like if you were in person, you would have the little 2-3 minute like banter sessions, or just like, hey, like, well, how was your weekend? Right. And like you go from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom. So I think that that's an incredible thing to maybe incorporate. So thanks so much. How about you, Kaylin? What are some of the things that your team has done in order to manage the collaboration for while in a still remote world?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of similar things to Mel and Kelsey's teams. You know, we have weekly stand-ups where we just kind of let's sit together and chat in the mornings about non-work related things. And early in the pandemic, we did sessions with like trivia sessions and that draw something game, and like let's just get together for 15, 20, 30 minutes and and bond, which has been great. I think my situation was a little unique in that I was kind of a remote team member from the beginning. I work, my office is in Tampa. JP Morgan has a very global presence. So I've got teammates all over the world that I was used to collaborating with over Zoom remotely. And that helped us keep it going. But I think what's been great about this environment that we're in now, my kids walk through the frame, and people's dogs walk through the frame, and we all meet each other's pets and families, and it's kind of nice to connect on a more personal level. And as an introvert, I've always, whether I've been in, like, my whole team is in one room and we have that office banter, or I'm working remotely, it's always been something I consciously have to do, which is like walk up to someone's desk and ask for something. Don't necessarily just send an email and wait for a response, though I won't disagree that is very respectful of other people's time. And that's important too, let them get to it when they have time, if it's not urgent. But I'm also a huge fan of, I'll tell you, once I discovered that Zoom calling feature, calling people up, hey, how's it going? I had a quick question for you. Thanks for taking this call. And I always say, turn on the camera. Like, seeing people face to face and connecting that way has always been face to face, virtually face to face, has been such a huge help in connecting, as we all kind of have stayed home a lot more over the last 18 months.
And I would agree too, seeing the pets and kids and just life, right? It makes it seem like we all now actually have a life, right? Because when you're at work, a lot of times, like, you don't talk about or see the other person and how they live and interact and all of that. And so it makes it seem more real and more personable. So I think that's one of the positive things from the pandemic, is that you actually get to see life happening outside of work, even when work is still occurring. So some of the things for the remote side, talking about investigations, is like, how do you incorporate some of the tactics while still working investigations to be handled efficiently? So one of the things that our team does, or that we have, it's almost like tracing happy hours, to where we sit around and we just nerd out about tracing, right? So that we can learn and find out patterns that may not be for like a specific investigation, but that are more focused on just like a trend that's happening within the blockchain, to then have these like nerd out sessions, is what I like to call them, so that you can then become really familiar with it. So then when it comes into your investigation, you're then aware of that. So what are some of the tactics that you all deploy? And I'll kick this off to Kelsey for leading the pack on this one.
I think just a good old fashioned lunch and learn and office hours each week is the best way. A couple other folks bring specific cases, and we all share a screen and just work through a tracing project together. I don't think we have any secret sauce on that one, but just sharing a screen goes a long way.
It does. Now, how about you?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, and similar to Kelsey, those lunch and learns are very valuable. We usually try to have at least like one technical session for those new to the team that may not be as technically savvy, like Lightning Network 101 or Privacy Coins 101, and then usually another presentation from another team in the company of just like, this is what we do, and here is how what we do impacts your team. And often some of the team members will get together, those who are interested in like acquiring additional skills, and we'll get together to learn something new that not necessarily related to tracing, but helps. So like me and a few others are learning to code. I had beginner knowledge before, especially with SQL, but now we're fully learning like how to become like blockchain developers, so we can maybe identify how these technologies are working a little bit better, so we can spot when something's happening during our tracing.
So you're going to become a white hacker.
I have signed up for that Udemy course.
Excellent. How about you, Kaylin?
Yeah, a lot of the same. Brown bags are great. We have success briefings where someone, presents something that they had done an investigation and kind of walk through the steps, which are great. We have a lot of clubs that do, like Mel mentioned, coding training sessions. And I took advantage of that as well. I've been learning Python through these kind of like 30-minute club sessions, which has been really, really great. Yeah.
I like the club session idea as well. It's where you can pick up expertise in another area that you may not have gone to college for, or like realize that it's part of your investigation. So some of the things for building a team. So as Mel said, she's hiring. I believe that we're all hiring. So in order to look for and building a team for an impactful yet influential team is imperative while working complex investigations. So how do you all develop a strong team of investigators? And I'll start off with Kelsey for this one.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think obviously it starts with hiring great folks. And so just getting people that have those basic analytical mindset and are really tenacious about finding information out. They don't necessarily have to have specific experience in investigations or in crypto, but just those two very basic mindsets. And giving them as much training and support and being a resource to answer lots of questions, but then just trusting them to use their analytical mind and give them the freedom and autonomy to learn, because this space evolves so rapidly. You really do have to have a hunger for figuring things out on your own. And as far as developing a good team, I think it also really helps to have a complementary skill set. I remember I was hired at the same time as another investigator, and it feels like she and I have a really good yin and yang balance. Stuff that I'm much weaker in, like organization, she is a rock star in. So it really helps to feel like we can find strengths in each other. So I think that's worked really well for our team.
Yeah, I would agree to that too. Having the insatiable desire to just learn and soak it in and be a self-starter is key. How about you, Kaylin? What do you think are the good pieces to the puzzle?
I agree with a lot of what Kelsey said. I think, looking for people with diverse experiences and diverse perspectives that bring a drive and a willingness to learn and to engage with the team, and bring a culture of we lift each other up and we all participate and we're all in this together, and not a me versus you mentality, but an us mentality is super important. Like Kelsey said, the tech piece can be taught. I can teach that. I can't teach someone to want to learn and want to play and want to participate in our mission and what we're doing. And I, certainly I'm happy. I always look for people who maybe don't have a background in tech, bring something completely different to the table. And I'm kind of a poster child for that myself. If you'd asked me 20 years ago if I'd be working in tech or cybersecurity, I would have said, absolutely no way. I majored in theater. I had nothing to do with tech, but through happenstance, I fell into it, learned I loved it, grew, had great training and great mentors and great opportunities, and here I am. And I don't think you have to have a certain background to be successful. I look for attitude, I look for culture, I look for willingness. Absolutely.
I would agree too that you don't have to have a technical background, because my husband is one to be like, I have no idea why you're in this field, Beth, because if something goes wrong with my computer, I'm just like, up, hands off, don't know what to do, right? But yeah, I can trace nobody's business, and he's like, to this day, I have no idea how you got into crypto. But yeah, so I agree with you. It doesn't matter what your background is, just as long as you're interested in investigating and learning. How about you, Mel? What are your thoughts with revolving around this?
Very similar to what Kaylin and Kelsey said. What I'm looking for and what has made my team so amazing is, of course, diversity, not just culturally, religiously, work experience. Like somebody said in the comments, hiring someone that used to work in the food industry. We love having that diversity to get the different points of view of, hey, this is not normal when a user does this, and when they're coming from this specific industry. So I love seeing resumes that are not just pure investigations or pure traditional finance or crypto even. But if the candidate, regardless of experience level, is spending the "so do you have any questions for us" portion of the interview, bringing up events in the industry to ask my opinion on it and to discuss it, or they personally trade in crypto and play around with the different aspects of the industry. I don't judge if they buy NFTs all the time. I know they'll do well on the team. So a genuine interest in the industry is important, because a good 2 hours of each day is me reading on the latest articles and the latest OFAC sanctioning, like the other day, sanctioning an entire exchange. You have to keep up on those things. So having a genuine interest is crucial. And I'm also, as both said, I'm looking for personality. Are they humble? Can they take feedback? Are they willing to accept the fact that they will never know everything? Because to this day, I still don't know everything, and I'm never going to. Are they someone that takes initiative and is more than happy to not only find a problem and an issue, but immediately take lead and find a solution themselves? Are they someone that cares not just about their own growth, but about others as well? Like Helen said, me versus you versus like we're in this together mentality. And where I currently consult as well in my previous position, culture is a big thing. And interviewers are often told that personality trumps everything else, regardless of how much experience or education someone has.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really like how it's a no judge zone when you ask them, like, are they trading in this space? Or are they transacting in this space? I think that's fantastic. So to round out the discussion before we open the Q&A, I want to touch on the promising aspects of crypto beyond the investigations. They say if you find yourself in a room being the go-to person, you need to find a new room. And I will say I have found that room within the crypto space. Each and every day is a new opportunity for me to grow. In every conversation, in every Zoom meeting, including this conversation today, I leave feeling like I have so much more to learn. So crypto quenches that thirst for knowledge for me. And I feel that within this space, it will continue to do so. So what do each of you find to be the most promising about crypto? And I'll kick that over to Kaylin to start off of.
So I touched on this a little bit earlier. I think the most promising thing to me is the accessibility of it. Anyone can play, anyone can learn, anyone can participate as much or as little as they want. And alongside that, with the rise of cryptocurrency, what we've done is reimagine this entire industry. What else can we do? I get kind of a lot of hope from that. The adaptability of us all in this space, and we look at a problem and we think there's another way to do this. Let's do it. Just like I said, filled me with a lot of hope, and I'm really excited to see where all of this goes.
Thanks for that. How about you, Mel?
It's very similar to Kaylin as well. I love crypto because it's the beginning of a solution to giving access to the world market, to the world's under and unbanked. That's really like what I see, like that's my favorite aspect of it. And that there's several projects in the works to allow those without internet access, whether due to issues in infrastructure or government, to still have access to the network. For instance, there's a decentralized mesh network being developed in Venezuela that would allow anyone to connect to the blockchain using long-range radio waves, even if that person doesn't necessarily have a direct internet access. And it's inspiring to be on Reddit, of all places, following these communities getting together to work towards the solution, and shows the advantage of decentralized technology. These individuals don't have to ask permission to work on these solutions because it's available to everyone. So it inspires people to get together because of that freedom.
Well said. How about you, Kelsey?
Very similarly, I think the greatest promise with crypto is just how empowering it is. We're fortunate enough to live in a country where we don't need to be really worried that the government or the currency would collapse, but it does personally give me a lot of solace to know that there is a store of value that I could take with me no matter where I needed to go, that is, essentially tamper-proof. And also, I think there's a lot of promise for investigators out there because there is this public blockchain that allows you to understand so much better what is going on in financial crimes in a much more transparent way than in traditional finance. So I think there's also a lot of promise when it comes to dismantling criminal networks.
No, thank you. And thank you all for answering the questions that were predetermined. And now we'll go over to answer some of the questions that have been relayed in the Q&A. So the first one, and I'll kick this off to Mel because it's kind of your side of things, of where can people find additional training for crypto?
Definitely. And I think that's one of the beauties of the industry is a lot of this is freely available. Like I learned mostly through YouTube videos and of course through Chainalysis' amazing certifications and courses. But a lot of this stuff is honestly like sign up on Udemy for and just create a new account to get the $15 courses instead of paying full price. Watching YouTube videos. And if you are serious about getting everything put together in a nice package for you, instructor driven with people that have experience in the industry, then I recommend signing up for the professional like designations. But otherwise, the information is out there, and there's so many like Crypto for Dummies articles for each aspect of this. It makes my job very easy to obtain like how something works whenever I run into the latest altcoin that's part of a project that's going to decentralize gardening or something. Like there's something out there to explain it to me in plain English how it works.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'll follow on with that. That one of the places that I went to when I was a first early learner within this space is the meetups. So you can search for Bitcoin meetups within your area, and like they're so accepting of newbies to this field, to where you can go sit and talk with them, and they'll walk you through like how to use a wallet, how to set up a wallet, how to set up stuff at an exchange. Like I found it extremely beneficial for just like getting knowledge about the space to then go play around. Kelsey or Kaylin, do you have any additional training resources that you would like to share?
I would just say YouTube is your best friend. There's all kinds of resources on YouTube.
Agreed. I was going to say Google. What's that joke? Like the difference between a senior engineer and a junior engineer? There's that the senior engineer will admit they use Google. Like I Google things all the time, like all day long, even, really basic questions. And when I got into the space, I went to Google. I think one of my first, not going to buy Bitcoin, but what is it? Oh, it's $5 real. I'll pass. So yeah, definitely the internet for sure.
So aside from Google and YouTube, do you have suggestions for go-to news sources and reading lists to condense the list for sources to keep up with the news, regulation, and just all things crypto? Sorry, I'll kick this over to Kelsey.
There's a ton of good media outlets now. CoinDesk has good kind of basic what's going on in the industry. Messari is a great, more specific technical resource. Yeah, those are the main ones that I would recommend.
How about you, Kaylin?
I'm not supposed to mention Google. I'm guessing that includes the news.google.com, where I have, my alerts set for this kind of stuff, but that's my main go-to.
And how about you, Mel?
I would say it depends on like what you're interested in keeping up with. If it's financial crime, all the blockchain intelligence companies like Chainalysis, they have a newsletter you can sign up for, and once a week or whenever something urgent happens, they send a mass email in plain English of here's what happened this week and here's why it's important. Here's the links to articles if you want to learn more about it. So it's a nice way of getting everything delivered to you. And as Kelsey mentioned, if you're looking for the more technical side, keeping up with Cointelegraph and CoinDesk, those are like kind of like our newspapers for the industry. They have not just regulatory and financial crime related stuff, but they have like, latest technology, why it's important, how's it going to work.
No, great resources. So kind of shifting from the technology and training and resources, but more of just where do you think this space is going to go? So do you think there is place for crypto that will continue into the next decade, or will you keep your skill set agile to keep up to date with whenever and wherever the technology may take us? I'll kick this one over to Kaylin first.
That's a great question. For me, I think it'll just depend. Where do things go? What do I find that next I'm passionate about, and will that continue to be crypto, or will there be a new technology that I want to follow. And I would say don't be afraid to reinvent your career at any stage. If it's a new technology, you're probably going to be one of the first in the space. There's not a lot of people that are already going to have filled those roles. But I don't see crypto going away anytime soon either. I think it's really exciting. So we'll just see where all that goes.
Kicking the same question over to you, Mel.
This question, every time I've answered it, I've been wrong for my predictions, like in a few years from now. So I'm just going to go with, I don't know, but I do absolutely believe there is a place for, if not digital currencies, but at least for the concept of blockchain and decentralization. And I'm so excited to see where it goes. And it's fun. It's like a cat and mouse game as an investigator. Criminals develop a new technology to obfuscate source of funds. We find out how to unmake that and trace through. Like now we know how to trace through Wasabi wallets, but now they've come out with a new patch that's going to fix that. But we're going to find a new solution to get past that barrier. So it's constantly challenging and it's fun to be in the industry. And I don't think it's going anywhere.
I would agree. Kelsey, kicking it over to you.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I can't imagine not working in crypto just because the pace of development is kind of addicting, and the folks that work here are such a great mixture of, passionate and quirky people. And I can't imagine crypto going away. I think in 20 years, the way people interact with it will probably be more abstracted. So it'll feel like strange to say I work in crypto in the same way it might be weird today to say I work in the internet. But I definitely think it's here to stay, but we'll just kind of create more layers between the way people interact with it and its actual infrastructure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I echo all three of what you all said. Kind of changing into some of the stuff that we talked about earlier and involving the collaboration and information sharing, especially regarding the topologies that we do just within the industry or with other investigators or a part of like the working groups that Mel had mentioned. Mostly because there are difficulties in doing this effectively in the non-crypto space, right? So in the traditional aspect. So do you feel that there are fewer barriers in sharing this information in the crypto space? And I'll kick that over to Mel first.
I mean, I'm being honest, my background is pure crypto AML, so I'm not too familiar with how it works in traditional finance, but besides the 314Bs and whatnot. But I will say in a lot of my previous roles, I've just randomly pulled up somebody on Telegram that worked at a different exchange and gave them an address and let them know like, hey, something is going on with this address. You may want to look into it. So it's very easy to forewarn each other of when tainted funds are coming their way. And of course, often on those Telegram groups, we're letting each other know, or venting anyways, of like, oh, we started spotting like this kind of activity, and letting each other know what to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, technology is also awesome in this space to be able to collaborate just because it's at your fingertips, right? So also kicking that same question over to Kelsey.
Yeah, same thing as Mel. I've never worked in traditional finance, so I actually don't have much to compare it to. But I will say there is a really strong ethos of exchanges trying to support each other, because I know anytime an exchange gets hacked, our security team always tries to jump on it and provide any support that we can, trace the funds. And then of course, like if they were to come our way, we would be very quick to act on that.
So Kaylin, you are the traditional finance. So how do you feel that there are more or less barriers being in the crypto space?
Yeah, I hate to disappoint. My background isn't actually in finance. I know I do work for, JP Morgan Chase, but traditionally not on that side. I've, completely been in cybersecurity and crypto investigations. But my experience has been that I think everyone recognizes that more collaboration and more communication is better for the good guys. We have more success against crime, and we have more proactive protection for clients and consumers when we all work closely together. And that's absolutely been my experience.
So before wrapping it up and we go to the little happy hour that we have after, is there anything else that thoughts or comments that you all want to express before we close out for the day? And I'll kick it back to Caitlin.
This has been great. I just want to say, thank you very much for having me and letting me speak with you all. As I've said, I'm really excited to see where crypto goes. I've really enjoyed the investigations, and getting some wins against the criminals has been really exciting. And I see more and more women becoming involved, and I think panels like this are really fantastic for continuing that trend and lifting each other up, and making sure that we're all heard, and that generally we're able to do some really great work. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. How about you, Kelsey? Any final comments?
Just thankful for you hosting this, Beth. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat more about crypto investigations. And I'm going to do a shameless plug for our open senior investigator role. We're really hoping to find someone great to join our team. So if you are interested at all based on our discussion today, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
And how about you, Mal? Any last final comments?
Shameless plug as well, like Elsie. If anybody is looking to get as a crypto investigator role, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. We're hiring like crazy for investigators. And I guess just a final like career advice, especially like I know the idea is like we're women. We don't want to stir the pot. We don't want to be loud, and it's sad that like we have to that many of us force ourselves to like stay quiet. But I am where I am because I went up to my manager and I told him, this is what I want. This is where I want to be. How can we get this done? And if they didn't work with me, then I'd go to the next manager or the manager directly on the team I wanted to be on. Because I got several no's before I got to the Kamlo that, took me a while to get the courage up to ask her to be on her team, but she's the one that gave me the yes. So don't be afraid to tell your managers, your leads what you want, because more often than not, they want to help you succeed.
Yeah, I echo that. Be the voice. You'll get things done. So that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Molly is going to drop the GatherTown link into the chat, which I think she's done several times. And we'd love to see you in this virtual networking session next. So thanks all. It's been a pleasure.